In this matchup, is he going to be able to do it? Personally, I don't think so. And a sneaky look for this fight. I actually think that... What's up, guys? Welcome to the first edition of the Lucrative MMA Betting Show. This week, we're speaking about Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, a banger of a featherweight title fight, and a bunch of other fights that I can't wait to break down with you and hopefully make some money on. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a professional gambler and I've made millions of dollars betting on sports, specifically mixed martial arts. I've done hundreds of podcasts about MMA betting, but this is the first edition of my new style of content and I'm naming it the Lucrative MMA Betting Show. As you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, I'm always trying to step up the content game. Hopefully you guys like the new show. Let's get into it. So in the main event of the evening, we got a banger matchup between Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway. Ilia Topuria has a 15-0 undefeated record in professional mixed martial arts against the 26-7 Max Holloway. Currently, they got Ilia Topuria as a -235 favorite, so pretty big favorite against Max Holloway, who comes back as a +200 underdog. Looking at the odds, it surprised me a little bit. I know Ilia Topuria has a lot of hype. I know Ilia Topuria is a great fighter, and coming off a viral KO win over Aleksandar, it's no surprise to see him as the favorite. But to see him as such a big favorite, -235, I was a little bit surprised. You know, I thought that we may see Ilia get up to about -200. I didn't think he'd push much past that. Because at the end of the day, both fighters have advantages over each other in this matchup, right? On the Ilia Topuria side, he has a massive advantage in power. And he has a massive advantage in the grappling, in my opinion. Now, Max Holloway has elite takedown defense, but something that I think a lot of people may look over in this fight is that there is a grappling aspect to this fight, you know, and I would not be surprised to see Ilia Topuria take Max Holloway down and do some damage from top position, maybe even put him in some dangerous positions. I could even see him getting a submission in this matchup. Now, for the most part, Ilia likes to strike, right? That is what he likes to do. And he's a great striker. He has crazy power in his hands. He's not much of a kicker. You know, I've hardly seen him throw any kicks in his entire career. But he's very good at closing distance, pushing fighters up against the cage, and unloading heavy shots like he did to many opponents, including Aleksandar in his last fight. But if you go back and watch some of his fights in his earlier career, he has a good few submissions on his record. Even in the UFC, he has a submission win over Bryce Mitchell, and Bryce Mitchell is known for the one getting the submissions, not being submitted. And in his first fight in the UFC against Youssef Zalal, he came in on short notice in that fight, and he won the fight via grappling. He basically grapple-fucked Youssef Zalal to win that fight. So if Ilia isn't having his way on the feet, there may be a path for him to get some grappling success going. Now, on the Max Holloway side, the guy is an elite striker, right? He's been out kickboxed in the UFC before, multiple times, right? He's not the best striker in the UFC, but he is an elite striker. He's able to adapt in fight, and his performance over Justin Gaethje was very impressive. I bet on him in that fight, and I had a massive bet on him. I put 7 units overall, and I also bet him to win inside the distance. So you can imagine me going crazy in the 5th round where he knocked out Justin Gaethje. I even think I did a live video reaction to that knockout when me and my friends were watching it.
Wow! What is that, 1 second left? Ow! Gaethje's done. Ow! Right. Oh!
So to see him get a knockout, it was very good for my bankroll, but it was also very impressive because it showed his maturity. You know, in that performance, he fought a lot more mature than some of his other fights. Max Holloway has been a punching bag for many fights in his career. You know, like even in fights that he is winning, he's going to war with fighters. Yair Rodriguez, right? He won that fight, but he took a lot of shots in that fight. The Dustin Poirier fight back in the day, that was a 5-round war. Even the Calvin Kattar fight, probably his best performance of his career, right? At least top 2. Right, Max Holloway landed 445 strikes in that fight. Calvin Kattar landed 133 strikes of his own. So even in fights that he was winning and dominating, he's still taking a lot of punishment. Now in his last few fights, that number has dropped significantly. Against the Korean Zombie, he only took 36 significant strikes and they ended up winning that fight by knockout. In the Arnold Allen fight, he only took 76 significant strikes and he doubled him up on strikes. He had over 140 significant strikes landed of his own. Now, Justin did land, you know, quite a few strikes. He landed 103, but it's a lot less than his fights back in the day. So he's adapted his style over the last 3 fights. And this could cause real problems for Ilia Topuria because, you know, Ilia Topuria needs to be in boxing range to do damage on Max Holloway, because if it's at kicking range, I think Max Holloway is going to be landing the better strikes. He's the longer fighter, the rangier fighter. He's going to be finding a home for his jab. He's going to be hitting spinning kicks. He's going to be hitting leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks. Whereas Ilia Topuria really needs to be in boxing range, right? If Max stays smart, if he stays patient, if he stays on the outside, he could win a volume contest against Ilia Topuria, much like Aleksandar Volkanovski did in that first round. You know, it was kind of outpointing him. He was doing well against Topuria. It's just he couldn't keep it up for long enough. He ended up getting corralled against the fence and knocked out. That is a real threat to Max Holloway in this fight, right? Because I have to imagine, right, at some point in the 5 rounds, Ilia Topuria is going to get him up against the cage. So he may avoid it for 1 round. He may avoid it for 2 rounds. I think at some point, Ilia is going to have him up against the fence and land heavy shots. Now, Max Holloway has one of the greatest chins we've ever seen in MMA history, right? So it's hard for me to sit in front of you right now and say for a fact that Topuria is going to knock him out. But I think if he doesn't knock him out, he's going to hurt him very badly. And it's going to be up to Max to get back and survive. He's done it throughout his whole career, but I don't think he's done it against a powerful and clinical puncher like Ilia Topuria. Honestly, if you go back and look at his whole career, I don't think anyone hits as fast, as hard, and as clinical as Ilia Topuria. And because of that, I have to pick Ilia Topuria to get the job done this weekend. If these guys meet in boxing range, Topuria is going to hurt him. And with the grappling upside, with the physicality upside, I have to pick Ilia Topuria. It just seems like a bad stylistic matchup for Max Holloway. Now, Max Holloway does have a chance to win the fight, and that chance is surviving damage early, staying on the outside, adapting his style to not commit to boxing range like Topuria wants, defending takedowns if Topuria goes there, and just out-voluming him and putting enough damage on him to make him slow down, especially to the body, and using that cardio advantage that Max definitely has to put it on him late in the fight and take over as the fight plays on. But I just feel like he's not going to work. I don't think that game plan is going to work. I think Topuria is too good, too fast, too quick, and I think he's going to be able to land his clinical shots that he needs to either put Max away or damage Max enough or scare Max off enough to where he wins the fight. So I'm picking a Topuria KO or decision, but man, he can win this fight in any realm. He really can. At the moment, full prop odds are not released. It looks like Ilia Topuria via KO is plus 180, and that doesn't really impress me that much. You know, I wouldn't play Ilia Topuria's KO line against someone who's never been knocked out, basically never been dropped. I'll wait until full prop odds are released and I may make a play. You know, I won a lot of money on Ilia Topuria last time out against Aleksandar Volkanovski. But at the moment, I'm passing on anything. You know, I'm going to take some time to decide my bets as I always do. But I am predicting Ilia Topuria to win this fight. Next fight of the night is Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. This is another banger. Co-main event is a banger. Main event is a banger. This whole card is super exciting and I can't wait for it. Hopefully we're going to be able to make some money. And honestly, I probably will make a bet on this fight. So we have Khamzat Chimaev coming in with a 13-0 record against the 26-7 Robert Whittaker. It's quite funny. The matchup and the records are almost identical to the main event. In the main event, Ilia Topuria was 15-0. Now we've got Chimaev 13-0. And Max Holloway and Robert Whittaker both have the exact same record at 26-7. You know, so we have 2 fighters here in the main and co-main where one fighter is a veteran of the sport going up against a up-and-coming superstar. Chimaev and Topuria, they're up-and-coming superstars. And a massive clash of styles in both fights. So very excited to see how this fight plays out. At the moment, we've got Khamzat Chimaev as the minus 245 favorite. And Robert Whittaker has a plus 190 underdog. So again, pretty interesting. The odds are almost exactly the same, as are the records of the Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway fight. Pretty interesting there. But the stylistics are not the same, right? We know what Chimaev is going to do in this fight. He's going to go forward, walk forward into range, shoot a takedown within 60 seconds, and try to dominate and maul Robert Whittaker on the floor, ground and pound him, dash choke him, submit him, take his back, slam him on his head, and get a first round finish. That's been Khamzat's MO since he came into the UFC. He's been dominating guys, throwing guys around every single round one. Never lost a round one, never really looked like losing a round one. He's been pure dominance, at least in round one since he come into the UFC. But let's speak about his cons, because he's not a perfect fighter, right? There's been 2 times where he's got outside of round 2, right? There's twice in his entire career where he's actually gone the full distance. And that was against the two best fighters he fought, right? So I don't think there's any coincidence in that the 2 times he's took a step up in competition are the 2 times he's actually gone to decision. He's finished everyone else. And that was the fight against Gilbert Burns and the fight against Kamaru Usman. And something that happened in both of those fights was that Khamzat Chimaev got tired, visibly tired. Now it's funny because before the Gilbert Burns fight, everyone thought Khamzat Chimaev was this unlimited gas tank fighter, right? Someone who could never tire out. But when you have a style as dominant and as aggressive, especially in the wrestling, not so much in the striking, but especially in the wrestling as Khamzat Chimaev, it's almost impossible to do that for 5 rounds, you know? What I'm trying to say, guys, is that if Robert Whittaker doesn't get finished in the first round, then there's a high probability that Chimaev tires out again. Now, I do think Khamzat Chimaev is smart enough and is physical enough and is good enough to where he can make a slight adjustment in his style, meaning that he will be able to dominate and look better later into the fight. Because at the moment, he's only looked like an unbeatable force in round 1. But if he does that, right, if he does change his style, and if he does say, look, in his last fight, he gassed out against Kamaru Usman. In this fight, I'm going to take it more patiently. Well, then he may be giving away his best asset, which is his dominance in round 1, his aggressiveness. And at the end of the day, there's only about 5% of fighters who can survive that round 1 against Khamzat Chimaev. So if he stops going as dominant or as aggressive in round 1, he may give himself a less chance to win. So it's very interesting that the very thing that holds him back at the moment is his cardio and gas tank, right, and his aggressiveness. That is also the very thing that has projected him to the top of the sport. And, you know, he's 1 fight away from a title shot now. So I expect him to come through with the same game plan. You know, he's never showed any different game plan from just dominating in round 1. So although I think he's capable of it, I don't think he will do it. I expect him to come out and shoot from the get-go. And it's going to be a real test for Robert Whittaker to see if he can defend that. You know, Robert Whittaker throughout his entire career has been heralded as a great anti-grappler. That's what everyone says, right? Everyone says that Robert Whittaker is an amazing defensive grappler, and he is, right? He's kind of like Israel Adesanya in that they have developed their style to be a kickboxing style that defends grappling. That's how Israel made his title reign. That's how Israel got to the top of the sport, right? He's a kickboxer who defends grappling, and he's very, very good at defending against the cage, and he made a whole career out of that. Robert Whittaker is similar. He defends the takedowns and beats you up on the feet. You know, he's done it time and time again. Now, in this matchup, is he going to be able to do it? Personally, I don't think so. At the end of the day, man, anybody who Khamzat has wanted to take him down, he has taken them down, and with ease. He dominated Kamaru Usman in the grappling in round 1 in his last fight. Kamaru Usman is an elite MMA wrestler. He's known by the entire fan base to be an elite MMA wrestler. So for him to get dominated in round 1, almost 10-8'd in round 1, it was very, very eye-opening. Because in the Gilbert Burns fight, he didn't really want to go into his guard. We didn't see that grappling dominance that we're used to from Khamzat Chimaev. But Kamaru Usman doesn't have this amazing, tricky guard. He's not an 80cc champion. So Chimaev wasn't scared about taking him down and sitting in guard. He took him down, dominated him, got his back. A couple more minutes in that round, who knows, he might have finished him. So I think he's going to be able to do the same with Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker has got great anti-grappling and great takedown defense. I don't think it's going to matter here. I think Chimaev is way too physical, way too strong, and way too good of a grappler to not take Robert Whittaker down. I think he's going to take him down, and I think he's going to fuck him up on the floor, honestly. I think he's going to land crazy ground and pound. I think he get a submission here. I think he get a ground and pound here. And a sneaky look for this fight. I actually think that Chimaev has a chance to hurt Whittaker on the feet. I've seen Whittaker rocked in almost every single one of his last 6-7 fights, right? Not every single one, but almost every single one. Let's go through it, shall we? The last fight, Ikram Aliskerov, right, it was a perfect performance. He got a very early KO. There was no chance for him to get hurt. Well done, good performance. But that's really it. That's where it ends. The fight before that was Paulo Costa. In the first round, he got spinning wheel kick to the head. He got rocked badly, and who knows, if there was another minute, Paulo Costa may have went off and finished him in that fight. I'm not saying he would have, I'm just saying there was a chance that he would have hurt Robert Whittaker again, and who knows what would have happened, right? The next fight against Dricus du Plessis, he got dropped and hurt badly with a jab, smashed on the floor, and finally finished in the second round. And by the way, shout out to the bookies because we got plus 300 on Dricus du Plessis in that fight, which is absolutely crazy when you go back and look at where they have gone after that. In the fight before that against Marvin Vettori, okay, he didn't get hurt. But that's Marvin Vettori. Fight before that against Israel Adesanya, he got dropped again with a jab in the first round. A couple of fights before that, Jared Cannonier hurt him badly. Fight before that, Darren Till hurt him with a stepping elbow. I mean, the guy's been hurt and hurt and hurt throughout his entire career. Now, he has good recoverability, but there is a clear issue with his chin and getting hurt and getting wobbled. So I could imagine a scenario in which Khamzat Chimaev hurts him on the feet and finishes him or follows him to the ground and smashes him. Another thing we have to note is that in the Dricus du Plessis fight, it's one of the only times where we have seen Robert Whittaker on his back, right? Because he's got great takedown defense. But Dricus got him down, and when he got him down, he smashed him on the ground. So I'm assuming Khamzat Chimaev will be able to do the same thing. So that's my breakdown for this fight, guys. I think Khamzat Chimaev is the side here. I think he's going to probably dominate, because if he wins, he always dominates. You know, he hardly wins a fight, looks good, without dominating, right? You know, the fights that he has won where he hasn't looked good, they've been almost 50-50 fights against Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. So look, man, if he doesn't get him out of there in the first 7.5 minutes, maybe even the first 5 minutes, then this fight could turn into a 50-50 fight. But Robert Whittaker's probably going to be damaged badly from round one, even if it does turn into a 50-50 fight. And if he's not damaged badly, he's probably going to be gassed out himself from taking a lot of punishment. And if he isn't gassed out, he probably lost the first round 10-8, or at least 10-9 anyway, so Khamzat still has an advantage going into round 2 and round 3 because he's going to be up on the scorecard. So yeah, I just think Chimaev is got a good stylistic matchup here, because although Robert Whittaker has good takedown defense, I just don't think it's good enough, and I don't think Robert Whittaker has a good chin, and I don't think Robert Whittaker has a good ground game once he does get taken down. So yeah, I think Chimaev's going to get the W here, probably inside the distance. The next fight, we got the English boy Lerone Murphy taking on Dan Ige. Lerone Murphy is undefeated at 14-0-1. And Dan Ige has a record of 18-8. Currently, the odds are -255 for Lerone Murphy, with an underdog price of +210 for Dan Ige. Not going to take too long on this one, guys. I like the Englishman to get it done. Maybe I'm being biased because I'm English. I always support my English fighters. But at the end of the day, I'm a professional gambler, right? I'm in this to make money. I'm not in this to support my hometown fighters and lose money on them. So I'm doing a bet and breakdown show, and I'm going to be fully honest with you. I've bet against English fighters many times, but I'm not going to be doing it here. Dan Ige has the power advantage. We know that. He even has the experience advantage. He has the MMA experience advantage and the UFC experience advantage and the high level advantage. So he does have some advantages here, but at this point in their careers, and to be honest, at any point in their careers, I just feel like Lerone Murphy is the much better fighter. He's the better fighter all round. Outside of pure power, I don't really see what edge, stylistically, outside of the record, that Dan Ige holds over Lerone Murphy. Cardio is basically a wash. They both have very good cardio, but I think Lerone Murphy has way better technical striking in that he can set up his strikes at many different levels. Good leg kicks, good body kicks, good headshots. I think he makes reads in the striking way better. I think he has way better eyes in and outside of the pocket. I think he sets traps a lot better. He maintains range better. He has the grappling upside in this fight. He has the fight IQ upside. He's been almost flawless in the UFC as well. I actually think he lost against Gabriel Santos. And maybe I'm being biased because I bet Gabriel Santos in that fight and I bet him at like +140 odds, and he lost a split decision. If I remember correctly, I think that was in England, and I feel like there was some hometown cooking in that decision. But at the end of the day, it's still a W on his record. So his record is flawless at the moment, and I think he gets another win this weekend, guys. I don't really see a path for Dan Ige except for a brutal knockout, which he's capable of. He's done it many times. Or maybe, you know, knocking him down in 2 out of the 3 rounds and winning the decision that way. I think Lerone Murphy's going to be too smart for him, too calculated, come in with too good of a game plan. And I think that if the striking is not working, which I think it will for periods of this fight, I think that the grappling will work, right? I think he's going to be able to take Ige down. I don't think he's going to be able to hold him down and dominate him, but I do think he'll take him down a couple of times throughout the fight, and that'll win him rounds, right? Maybe even hold him up against the fence, lands some good knees, takes him down a couple of times, you know, puts one hook in, takes half of his back, Ige stands up, he kills about a minute or 2 on the fence, and it clearly wins him the round in an otherwise fairly even striking round. I can see that fight playing out many times. You know, I think that Lerone Murphy is going to win this fight. I think he's going to look good doing so, and I think he might call for a title shot after. You know, at the end of the day, he's undefeated in the UFC, got many good wins on his record. I think he got a performance of the night bonus against Edson Barbosa in his last fight. And that was a step up in competition. Now he's taking another step up in competition. So I could very well see him call for a title shot after this fight, or at least a #1 contenders fight. This is very high up on the card, you know. A lot of people speak about who the UFC wants to win. And I don't like that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who the UFC wants to win. All that matters is who wins on the day. And you can decide that by watching tape study, right? For example, if the UFC want Lerone Murphy to win, right? Which they probably do, right? I'm pretty sure that they do that. And I'm pretty sure there's a reason they're putting him on this high up the card, outside of his home country, on a fight where it's headed by the featherweight title fight, which is his weight class, right? There's a reason they're doing that. They obviously want Lerone Murphy to win this fight. But if I then watch tape, as I do every week, if I research these fighters, and in my research, I find that Dan Ige is a much better fighter than Lerone Murphy, it doesn't matter what the UFC want. I'm still going to bet on Dan Ige, who I think the better fighter is. It just so happens that I agree with the UFC in this spot, which is that, you know, they want Lerone Murphy to win. I think he's going to win when I watch tape. So who the UFC wants to win is a bit of a myth. It doesn't really matter. But if it aligns with your tape study research, if it aligns with your thoughts on who is going to win the fight anyway, then it is a bit of an added bonus, because, you know, the UFC are not stupid. For the most part, they do a decent job matching up their prospects with fighters who that they should probably get a win over. But at the end of the day, just remember that your opinion is way more important than the UFC's opinion. Because if the UFC had their way, Conor McGregor would still be champion, Sage Northcutt would be champion, Paige Van Zandt would be champion. And that's not how the game plays out, right? At the end of the day, these two guys are going to fight. And in this one, I do think Lerone Murphy's going to get a win. Next fight of the night is Magomed Ankalaev versus Aleksandar Rakic. Now, this should be a banger, considering the level of these two guys in the light heavyweight division. You know, they're top 5 fighters in the light heavyweight division, but based on the stylistics, based on how both fighters fight, I don't think it's going to be a great fight. It could be, but I think it's going to be probably one of the more boring fights on the main card. But hey, they're big boys, so all it takes is one shot to land to make it exciting. But yeah, as I said, we got Magomed Ankalaev going against Aleksandar Rakic. Magomed Ankalaev is currently 19-1-1, and the 1-1 represent 2 strange fights for Ankalaev, which we will get into. And Aleksandar Rakic has a record of 14-4. Currently, we've got Magomed Ankalaev as a massive favorite, -360, with the underdog price on Rakic coming back at +285. So just to give you my first thoughts straight off the bat, and I do want to look into this matchup a little bit more, right? It's still early in the week. I still have some tape study to do. So I will look a little bit deeper into this matchup. But seeing Ankalaev at -360 never looks great when he's going up against a good, well-rounded prospect, right? When he's fighting the likes of Johnny Walker, Ion Cutelaba, yeah, obviously he's going to outmatch them, outskill them in almost every department. But Rakic is a solid fighter. He's a good fighter. So I can't agree with the -360 odds on Magomed Ankalaev, considering the way he fights. And what I mean by that, guys, is if you go back and watch this guy's fights, there's many times that he can make the fight very easy for himself, and he doesn't. You know, he doesn't fight to his strengths. His fight IQ is non-existent. It's not high level at all. You know, there's many fights he can go and dominate with his wrestling. He's a very, very good grappler. He's been a very good grappler from his regional scene days. You know, I've watched this fight against Muradov, which is, I think that might have been Ankalaev's debut, right? Against Muradov, who's a very, very good Bellator/PFL fighter at this point in his career. And Ankalaev grappled him, right? It's Ankalaev's debut, and he grapples him badly. He takes him down for 3 rounds and just dominates him on the ground for the most part. You know, so that's super early on in his career. As I said, it was his debut. I think it was his debut or one of his first few fights. And what that shows me is that even early on, this guy is a wrestler, he's a grappler, he can smash you on the ground. And now all he wants to do is strike. Now the issue is he can be very, very low volume at times, and he doesn't have that great power. So when you're low volume and you don't have massive power for the weight class, you can get yourself in positions where you're getting outboxed, out-kickboxed, and having close fights with fighters that you could otherwise dominate grappling. Like the Jan Blachowicz fight, for example. He could easily have dominated Jan Blachowicz from round 1 with the grappling. Instead, he waits till he gets his leg kicked off before he starts grappling, and then he dominates him later into the fight. And he just squeaks a draw there. You know, on another day, He could have lost that fight and we wouldn't even be talking about him in title contention. And what makes it even worse is that that fight was clearly a setup fight for whoever wins that fight will fight for the title. And actually it was more set up for Ankalaev to go out there, beat Jan Blachowicz and fight for the title. Dana White came out publicly and said that we are not giving a title shot to Ankalaev after that performance. He could have made the performance easy. He probably would have got an inside the distance win if he grappled from the get-go. So like I said, you just can't trust this guy at massive prices against good, competent, well-rounded fighters. And that's what Rakic is at the end of the day. You know, is he going to win this fight? It's going to be a tough test, right? Ankalaev is probably the better technical striker still. He's definitely the better grappler. He has the grappling upside. He's just a better, cleaner, technical fighter all around. But his margins are probably thin. Even in the fight he wins, it's probably going to be 29-28. Unless he's finishing Rakic, I think this fight is going to be a close fight. And how I mentioned the leg kicks in the Jan Blachowicz fight, they could play a part here because Rakic does throw leg kicks and he throws hard leg kicks. And we've seen time and time again Ankalaev have trouble dealing with the leg kicks in his MMA career, especially in that Jan Blachowicz fight, who is a great leg kicker himself. But you know, if Ankalaev gets off to a slow start and Rakic starts piling up those leg kicks from round one, that could really take its toll in this fight. And Rakic is a better defensive grappler for sure than Jan Blachowicz. So it's not a guarantee that Ankalaev's going to go out there and just be able to take him down. On top of that, you know, in that fight against Jan and other fights as well, Ankalaev has been ridiculed a little bit about his fight style. You know, everybody says his fight style is boring. So I don't think that he's going to want to go out there and grapple in this fight. He wants to fight for the title. You know, he even posted on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, that if he fights Alex Pereira, he's going to stand with him. He's not going to shoot takedowns. So he's going to want to be in the good books of Dana White. He's going to want to be in the good books of the UFC. He doesn't grapple that much anyway. So I think that there's a high probability that in this fight, he doesn't grapple. Even if he gets his leg chewed to pieces, he might not grapple as aggressively as he should do. So at the end of the day, guys, if we're getting a stand-up matchup between these two guys, I do favor Ankalaev. I think he is better, but I don't think he's better by minus 360 odds, right? I don't think he's better to the point where he should be a massive, massive favorite. I think he should be a slight favorite. I think you can make him minus 175 range. Around that, right? Around that. I don't think you make him minus 360 here, boys. He could very well take his first L. So I am going to pick Ankalaev to win. I think he's got more ways to win. I think he's the better fighter. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's better in almost every area of MMA. But his fight IQ is worse, and just based on the dynamics of this fight, based on the mindset of Ankalaev and the previous performances that he has put up in the octagon, I think that this fight has a very good chance of being a close split decision type fight. And in that type fight, you always want to bet on the underdog. Remember, guys, I'm not trying to analyze this fight from a who wins perspective as much as I am trying to analyze it from a who is a good bet perspective. Because even if I pick Ankalaev to win, if I'm thinking it's going to be a very close fight, if I think it's going to be a 29-28 type fight, right, where both fighters have their moments, then obviously you're going to bet on the plus 300, not the minus 300. That's just an obvious thing, right? Even if you don't understand professional gambling, even if you don't understand sports betting and plus EV betting and value betting, if you don't understand that, you still can understand that in a close fight, you're going to want to bet on the plus 300, not the minus 300, right? And that's how I see this fight playing out. You know, I could be wrong, because like I said, Ankalaev is the better fighter all around. He could go out there and prove that. But at the end of the day, I think there is some value on Rakic. I am going to look into it a little bit more. I'm going to see if there's any props I can play that may be higher value than Rakic's money line. I'm also going to see where the money comes in, because you know what happens on these pay-per-view cards when you have big favorites, especially when they end with OV in their name. The parlay money comes in. Everyone's going to be parlaying Ankalaev. So, you know, I could definitely see a realm in where Rakic gets plus 300, even higher here. So I'm just going to take my time at the moment. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm going to look into it a little bit more. But those are my preliminary thoughts on the fight. I do think that it's a close fight and there is some value on the underdog here. The first fight on the main card, kicking off the main card, is Shara Bullet Magomedov versus Arman Pertrosyan. We've got the 14-0 Shara Magomedov. He's undefeated in professional MMA versus the 8-3 Arman Pertrosyan. Currently, they got Magomedov as a slight favorite, minus 150, and the underdog price on Arman Pertrosyan is plus 130. This is a fun fight, boys. You know, striker versus striker. I think they're probably going to go out there and kickbox for the majority of minutes in this fight. I do think that Arman Pertrosyan may wrestle here. I think he will wrestle here, but I don't think he's going to be shooting from the get-go. I don't think he's going to be shooting for 15 minutes. I think we're going to see some fun striking exchanges in this fight. You know, it's hard for me to predict this one because I've got a decent record recently on Arman Pertrosyan, you know, on Rodolfo Vieira last time out. It made it look easy. I bet on Rodolfo Vieira at -110 and he subbed him in the first round. I thought that was an easy matchup for Rodolfo Vieira, just, you know, with the stylistics of Pertrosyan being a kickboxer and giving his back, etc. And then in the fight before that, I bet on Pertrosyan as a +130 underdog against Christian Leroy Duncan, and he soundly out-kickboxed him there to a 30-27 decision. And on the Shara side, I'm 1-1 in his fights. I bet on him in his debut at -200. He won cleanly, although he did get taken down a couple of times in that fight and didn't look good on the ground at all. But he just won via damage. And then I also bet against him again, or I bet against him for the first time with Michel Aleksandar, and yeah, he won that fight, but Michel gave it a good go. It was a close fight at times, and Shara, again, didn't really impress me. So yeah, it's a tough one for me to break down, boys, because on the one hand, I do think that Pertrosyan has a chance of winning this fight. I mean, he's a good kickboxer himself, so I don't think he's going to be dominated on the feet. You know, kind of like how Bruno Silva was just getting eaten up on the feet quite badly. So was Michel. I think Pertrosyan is way smarter than those two guys in kickboxing. You know, not so much in the boxing range, but in kickboxing, which is where Shara likes to fight. I think Pertrosyan does well there. You know, he's not that easy to hit. He's not that easy to land damage on. His volume is quite high himself, which is good because Shara's volume is high, and that's how he usually wins fights, volume/damage. You know, he throws a lot of strikes. He throws a lot of kicks. He's a very, very good kicker. He's not a great boxer, but he is a very good kicker. And he has unlimited volume, right? He's going to throw strikes from every position in the fight. If you take him down, he's going to throw elbows off his back, but he doesn't have a good get-up game. It's very hard for him to get back to his feet. But when he does get back to his feet, he's going to get that round back a lot of the time just by throwing tons of kicks. But Pertrosyan can negate some of the kicks by his own kickboxing prowess. You know, it's kind of hard for me to see how the fight's going to play out on the feet. I think it could be close. I do favor Shara Bullet on the feet. I think that his style is very, very hard to deal with. And I don't think that Pertrosyan is going to be that well versed with dealing with someone with such athletic kicks, such physicality in the kicking game. You know, he's almost like a taekwondo fighter, the way he throws them kicks. And that is very, very hard to defend against and fight against if you are not used to it. And Pertrosyan is a classic kickboxer, you know. I don't think he's going to be that familiar with the kicking style of Shara. So, you know, even if he does win on the feet, I think it's going to come later into the fight. Shara gets a little bit tired, slows down a bit, and Pertrosyan gets his reads. I think in the first round, Shara's probably going to be dancing around him a little bit, landing strikes. But the equalizer here is the wrestling. You know, Pertrosyan is a kickboxer, but he's wrestled in multiple fights. Now, he's not a good wrestler. I think he's only got one takedown in the entire UFC career, but he's shot about 5 or 6 and over multiple fights. The only fights he didn't really shoot in are fights where he's going up against a clearly better grappler. You know, he didn't shoot against Kovalev in the Dana White's Contender Series because that guy was a wrestler. He didn't shoot against Gregory Rodriguez because Gregory was shooting against him and he's a grappler. He didn't shoot against Kai Bahayo because Kai Bahayo is a grappler. But in every other fight, when he's fighting a striker, he is shooting takedowns, right? So I think that it's, you know, fairly probable that we see him shoot a couple of takedowns here. And let me tell you, if he gets one, I don't trust Shara to get back to his feet. Now, I don't really know if Arman's going to be able to do much from top position because at the end of the day, he is a lifelong kickboxer versus an MMA fighter. But the grappling upside is there for him, right? He may steal around with takedowns. So, yeah, this is a hard one for me, guys, because on the one hand, I feel like Shara's probably going to land more damage. He's probably going to win round 1 or the early going at a decent clip because it's going to take some time for Pertrosyan to understand the style of Shara. But on the other hand, Pertrosyan has all the grappling upside here. It should be fairly close on the feet. Both fighters land high volume. My opinion, this is a step up in competition for Shara. Probably the best fighter he's ever fought. So it's a tough one for me, guys. You know, it seems like it probably should be lined around the pick'em. You know, so you could argue that there is current value on Arman Pertrosyan, but I don't think there's enough value for me to play him. At least not in this point of my studies. Now, when I look into the fight a little bit more, I look into stats a little bit more, I look into tape a little bit more, I may end up with a bet on one of these fighters. Maybe I completely flip-flop my decision. That's not out of the realm of possibility. You know, oftentimes I will change my decision as I watch more tape. I would change my decision as I look into the stats a bit more. I would change my decision on a fight as I look more into it. And if that is the case, if I do end up with a bet on any one of these guys, obviously I will post it up on my website. And if you are a member of my website, if you're a member of my VIP, you will get full card breakdowns, and those are my final thoughts and obviously you'll get all of the official bets, which are my final thoughts. So at the moment, guys, I'm going to say that there is some value on Pertrosyan, but I do want to look into the fight a little bit more. I do want to be confident in that he will shoot takedowns, or will he shoot takedowns? And if he does, how much can he do from top position? Can he negate Shara's damage or negate Shara's volume on the feet? You know, these type of things I'm going to look at tape, I'm going to research, and I'm going to make my decision on whether I'm going to bet on any of these guys or just pass on the fight overall. There may be some props that we can play as well. We'll see what happens in the next few days when I look at more tape study. And that's going to be it for today, boys. The first episode of the Lucrative MMA Betting Show. We ran through the entire main card. I'm not going to run through the prelim card here. I will do my best to do a full card live stream later on, and that will be live so I can interact with you in the chat. So just make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn the notification bell on so you get notifications when I go live, so you can come and ask me questions, we can interact, and I'll do the full card there. And if you did want to support me and sign up to my website, you get access to all of my official bets for the week, including the UFC, as well as any other regional events that we bet on. So if you want all of my official bets, UFC bets, and all of the regional, go to lucrativemmabetting.com, sign up there. You also get access to my long shot parlays, which have been killing it this year, long shot props, full card breakdowns, other potential value bets on the card, etc., etc. But outside of that, that's going to be a wrap. I hope we make money this weekend, boys. I'm excited for it. I'm going to have a lot of bets on this card, and just looking at the card, looking at the odds, looking at the fighters, this is a type of card that I usually do well on. So good luck. See you in the next one.